Hey, story lovers, and welcome back to our page. Can you feel that rhythm? That's the heartbeat of a new tale we're about to dive into. Forget what you think you know about love, because today, we're crossing borders and blending traditions with a story that's as vibrant and powerful as the continent itself. Meet Mimia, a force of nature from East Africa, and Nonso, a visionary from Nigeria. Their love story isn't just a romance, it's a beautiful clash of cultures, languages, and families. From hilarious misunderstandings to profound moments of connection, they're about to show us that a shared future is a choice worth fighting for. Are you ready to witness a love that defies distance and expectation? Get ready, because the journey starts now. Mimia was exhausted but hopeful when she landed in Frankfurt for a global youth conference. She was representing a Kenyan NGO focused on female empowerment. Between workshops and panel talks, she slipped into a quiet corner cafe to catch her breath. That's where she met Nonso, a tech entrepreneur from Nigeria, attending the same conference. He had just pitched his app idea to a European incubator and needed strong Wi-Fi. They reached for the same table, smiled, and decided to share it. Their conversation started with awkward politeness but soon grew into lively banter about home foods, ugali versus fufu, sukuma wiki versus okra soup. Mimia was fascinated by how animated Nonso became when talking about his family's yam festival. He, in turn, was awed by her grace and the way she described Maasai traditions with pride. They were so different, yet strangely familiar, two African souls on foreign soil. As the day turned to evening, neither wanted to say goodbye. A mutual pull kept them exchanging numbers, promising to meet at the evening gala. What began as casual interest was now growing roots, deepening into something unexpected and meaningful. Over dinner at the conference's closing ceremony, Mimia asked Nonso if he'd ever been to East Africa. He hadn't, his world mostly revolved around Nigeria and the occasional trip abroad. So Nairobi is cold sometimes, he teased, shocked at her stories of Mount Kenya's snow-capped peaks. Mimia couldn't believe he thought all of Kenya was safari parks and lions. She, in turn, struggled with Nonso's strong accent at first but found it strangely endearing. They laughed at how she called slippers rubber shoes and how he used I day in every sentence. But their differences only made conversations more colorful, not confusing. They spent the next week exploring Frankfurt hand in hand, despite their schedules. They talked about faith, childhood, and their dreams. Beneath the charm and jokes was a deeper realization: they weren't just tourists in each other's lives. They were explorers of something more permanent. Back in Nairobi and Nsukka, the time difference didn't help, but love finds a way. They FaceTimed through unstable Wi-Fi, sent voice notes daily, and mailed handwritten letters. When Nonso sent her a playlist of Igbo love songs, she cried. When Mimia surprised him with a video of her trying pounded yam, and failing hilariously, he laughed until his sides ached. They found comfort in their differences. Nonso shared his mother's jollof rice recipe, and Mimia taught him how to make chapati. Though miles apart, their hearts felt synced. They were becoming each other's person. Their families were curious but cautious. A Kenyan girl? Nonso's cousin had whispered. Mimia's aunt had raised an eyebrow. He's Igbo? They like strong women. They chuckled about it, but both knew the real tests lay ahead. The first video call with Nonso's family was a comedy of errors. Mimia wore a colorful lasso, trying to impress, only to realize later it was traditionally worn by older women. Meanwhile, Nonso mispronounced Karibu in a call with her father, which sounded more like Karibu Sana Nyama, accidentally inviting her dad for meat. But with every misstep came growth. Nonso began learning Swahili phrases. Mimia tried to understand Igbo proverbs. He who has people is richer than he who has money, Nonso once said. It stayed with her. Yet, serious topics began surfacing. Nonso wanted to stay in Nigeria. Mimia was planning a career in the UN. They had differing views on church traditions, parenting, and even gender roles. But they leaned in instead of pulling away, choosing to confront instead of avoid. When they first talked about marriage, Mimia asked, "Would your family accept me?" Nonso paused. He loved her, but knew his parents had always expected an Igbo bride. On Mimia's end, her family expected a Christian man, not just culturally but spiritually aligned. Nonso, more liberal in his faith, struggled to bridge that gap. They visited each other's countries. Mimia to Nsukka during the New Yam festival, and Nonso to Nairobi during Mashuja Day. She wore her first Nigerian gele and danced at the village square. He visited a Maasai village and left wearing a beaded necklace from an elder who blessed him as one of us. In these moments, they didn't just experience culture, they lived it. And slowly, families began warming up. Nonso's mother, impressed by Mimia's humility, said, "She listens. She observes. That's a good wife." Mimia's dad, seeing Nonso help in the kitchen, gave a rare nod of approval. Mimia surprised Nonso one Christmas by flying to Nigeria. She arrived wearing a green Ankara gown she'd made from fabric he had sent months before. His family welcomed her with smiles and carefully measured warmth. The food, music, and community overwhelmed her, but she took it all in, eager to understand. At New Year, Nonso joined Mimia's family at their rural home in Nairobi. It was quieter, more reserved. He prayed quietly at dinner instead of leading prayer like he would in Nsukka. But he helped her grandmother tend to the goats and impressed everyone by pounding makimo. Her uncles nodded in approval. They were learning the art of adjustment, not to erase their cultures, but to weave them. They now celebrated 2 sets of holidays, told stories in 2 languages, and even began designing a wedding that would honor both lineages. "We are not losing ourselves," Mimia said one evening. "We're expanding." Their traditional engagement became the talk of both communities. In Nsukka, Mimia wore an Igbo wrapper and performed the wine-carrying ceremony with grace. She knelt before Nonso, and their eyes locked, not just in love, but in silent understanding of what they were promising. In Nairobi, Nonso danced alongside Kikuyu drummers, his agbada swaying in rhythm. He surprised Mimia by addressing her family in Swahili, well-rehearsed, albeit heavily accented. Both families saw it. This wasn't convenience. It was commitment. For Mimia and Nonso, food became their language of peace. She learned to cook oha soup, and he became a pro at preparing pilau. Whenever they fought, which happened more now as wedding planning added pressure, they found their way back over shared meals. The kitchen became a place of healing. They decided to settle in Lagos. Mimia found a job with a Pan-African NGO, while Nonso expanded his tech startup. Life moved fast, but the cultural friction still surfaced. Mimia missed the Nairobi cool breeze and the pace of East African cities. Lagos was vibrant, but exhausting. They fought more in those early months. Little things, like how loud his relatives were on speakerphone or how she sometimes avoided family functions to rest, turned into big things. At one point, Nonso accused her of not trying hard enough. Mimia snapped, "This is not my home. I'm trying to make it feel like one." But therapy helped. They found an intercultural counselor who helped them unlearn assumptions and listen better. "You are not wrong. You are just different," the counselor repeated. That sentence stayed with them. Slowly, understanding deepened, and the tension gave way to grace. Mimia began a mentorship group for immigrant wives in Lagos. She helped other East African women navigating Nigerian culture, paperwork, and in-laws. She turned her pain into a purpose. Nonso supported her wholeheartedly, even when his own business hit funding delays. He began to realize how much strength she carried. One evening, he watched her speak Swahili on a webinar, confidently addressing a regional women's conference. "You're not just my wife," he told her later. "You're a force." She smiled. "And so are you." Their marriage was not seamless, but it was sacred. It was stitched with resilience, stitched with forgiveness. They learned to laugh more, judge less, and love intentionally. And in their small apartment in Lekki, they wrote down traditions from both families, to teach their future children. They both wanted children, but how to raise them became a debate. Nonso wanted them raised in Nigeria. Mimia wanted them to spend time in Kenya, learn Swahili, and grow up knowing her people. They agreed on one thing: the children would speak both languages. Naming was another conversation. Nonso wanted strong Igbo names, and Mimia wanted names tied to ancestry. They compromised, giving each child a Nigerian name, a Kenyan name, and an English one. "Our kids will be a continent," Mimia joked. "A whole Africa." They prepared a nursery with both East and West African elements, beaded decor, Zibidi symbols, wildlife paintings, and woven mats. It was not just a room. It was a manifesto: "Our family is hybrid, and that is beautiful." When their daughter, Zara Chidibir Wangari, was born, the room was filled with tears. From Mimia's mother, who flew in from Kenya, and Nonso's father, who held the child and muttered prayers in Igbo. "She is our future," he whispered. A union of tribes. Zara was everything to them. Mimia sang her lullabies in Kikuyu, Nonso taught her Igbo proverbs between bedtime stories. They hung flags of both Nigeria and Kenya in her nursery. Her baby photos went viral on social media, her dimpled smile in Kaitenj and Iziagu becoming a symbol of hope for multicultural families. But parenthood tested them too. Sleepless nights led to short tempers. Differing beliefs on discipline caused rifts. "We're not our parents," Mimia reminded him once, "we're writing a new script." That became their parenting mantra: intentional, blended, evolving. Trouble brewed when Nonso's aunt visited and insisted that Mimia wasn't submissive enough. "She speaks too freely," the aunt said. "In our tradition, women let men lead fully." Mimia overheard it, and quietly cried in the bathroom. Nonso confronted his aunt, explaining that his wife's strength was part of what made their home thrive. "If you can't respect my home, you can't stay in it," he said firmly. His mother later called to apologize on behalf of the family. "She's different," Mama said. "But she's gold." That moment deepened Mimia's trust in Nonso. "Thank you for choosing me," loudly, she whispered that night. "Always," he replied. And though tensions would rise again, between cultures, elders, and expectations, they became better at facing them as a team. A few years into marriage, Nonso's startup collapsed. Investors pulled out. Salaries went unpaid. He spiraled into depression, staying in bed for days. "I've failed you," he said one night, eyes hollow. "You married a dreamer who crashed." Mimia stepped up, took on more work, found grants for his relaunch, and encouraged therapy. "You are not your failure," she told him. "You're a builder. And we'll rebuild together." She had seen storms before. This one would not destroy them. In that period, they learned something rare, that love isn't always pretty. Sometimes, it's holding someone in their darkest hour, feeding them hope on a spoon when they've forgotten how to eat. Love, they realized, is not always a feeling. It's often a decision. Zara's school held an identity week. When asked about her roots, she stood on stage and said, "I am half sun, half river. Kenya is my song. Nigeria is my drum." The hall applauded. Mimia wept. Nonso's eyes glistened. They realized then, everything they had struggled through was worth it. Their child knew who she was, not torn between two worlds, but lifted by them. She could recite an Igbo proverb and tell a Kikuyu folktale in the same breath. Later, they wrote letters to Zara about their love story, each from their own cultural lens. "So she'll know love is layered," Mimia said. "And strong enough to stretch across borders." Religion became a quiet battlefield. Nonso was rooted in Catholic tradition. Mimia practiced a more modern, Pentecostal style. Their early compromise, alternating churches, grew strained as Zara began asking deeper questions. They decided to teach her both beliefs, encouraging exploration rather than imposition. They focused on shared values, honesty, service, compassion. "Let her faith be informed, not forced," Mimia said. Nonso agreed, though it challenged him. Over time, faith became less of a battleground and more of a bridge. They prayed together differently but believed in the same creator. They learned to honor the divine in each other's language, even when it sounded unfamiliar. At a community gathering, a friend once whispered to Nonso, "You really married outside the tribe, huh?" The comment wasn't meant kindly. Another colleague called Mimia too opinionated for a Nigerian man. The microaggressions hurt. They began to understand that sometimes, the hardest part of intercultural marriage wasn't inside, but outside. People saw them as a statement, a social experiment. Rarely just a couple in love. It was exhausting. So they built a circle of allies, other multicultural couples, open-minded elders, and kind friends who didn't exoticize their union. "We're not here to prove anything," Mimia said. "Just to love each other well." When Nonso got a job offer in Nairobi, they paused. Mimia's heart leapt, but she didn't want to uproot their child unless they were sure. "Where is home?" she asked Nonso one night. He thought long. "Home is where we are safe to grow. Let's go." So they packed up, said tearful goodbyes, and moved east, again. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. In Nairobi, Nonso thrived. Zara adapted quickly. And Mimia, she exhaled in a way she hadn't for years. It wasn't Nigeria or Kenya that made it home. It was them. Mimia and Nonso began giving TED-style talks on intercultural marriage. They were invited to podcasts, panels, and retreats. People listened, not because they had perfect answers, but because they had honest stories. They spoke of patience, the power of apology, and choosing curiosity over judgment. Their story inspired others, not to imitate, but to believe that difference doesn't have to divide. It can deepen. They were far from perfect. But their love had roots. And now, it bore fruit, impacting others, building bridges between tribes, generations, and even continents. At age 10, Zara once asked, "Did it ever scare you to love someone so different?" Mimia and Nonso looked at each other. "Yes," Mimia said. "But fear doesn't mean run. Sometimes it means lean in." Nonso added, "And difference isn't danger. It's a doorway." We walked through ours, and found each other. Zara nodded, her eyes wiser than her age. "Then I hope I find someone from a whole different world too." Mimia and Nonso smiled. That was the dream. Not for Zara to mimic their love, but to be fearless enough to choose her own, across lines others dare not cross. Years later, Mimia and Nonso sat on their porch, gray at the temples, watching the sun set. We did it, Nonso said softly. We made it across. Mimia squeezed his hand. We didn't just cross, we built a road. They had raised children who knew how to ask questions. They had mentored couples across Africa. And they had written their story, Bridges of Love, a tale of two nations, now studied in marriage courses and cultural diplomacy programs. In the final chapter, they wrote, "Our love was never easy. But it was enduring. And in every dish shared, every misunderstanding forgiven, every vow honored, we showed that love, when chosen daily, can change the world." Well, my friends, that's all the time we have for this tale. But remember, every ending is just a new beginning. Keep that fire in your soul, that rhythm in your step, and may your stories be as vibrant as the continent itself. Until next time, stay blessed.